So let's call the meeting to order. It's 6:32. And I'm gonna read the procedures because we're doing it on Zoom. So these are the remote meeting procedures in keeping with the ongoing emergency order from Governor Charlie Baker to limit gatherings and maximize social distancing, and under legislation passed to address remote board meetings during the emergency declaration. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by committee members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count toward the quorum. Okay. While we're conducting the meeting remotely, we will endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to our standard procedures as possible. However, use of this platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. The board members and town staff participants are on video and audio. Public participants, however, are on the meeting muted and with no video. So public attendees, if you have any questions you would like to ask, please use the Q&A box, which we will monitor and address as appropriate during the meeting. I'm skimming over the irrelevant stuff because we don't have applicants. Members of the public, when you are submitting a Q&A, you must state your name and your address in keeping with open meeting law requirements. And when all business indicated on the agenda has been completed, members will vote to adjourn the meetings. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question, Liz? I know that we're not recording this with ECAT, but can we get a transcript of any of the questions that were asked? Like
probably. It looks like it is being recorded at least through the town. So Mike, are we able to get a copy of the Q&A transcript?
Yeah, so there's two things. One, we do record it just for our records. So we have the actual video available, and Zoom is able to provide a transcript, a printed transcript of the Q&A session as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so first agenda item is minutes from our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes or any comments on the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes pass unanimously. Okay, second item. So since it is July, the first meeting of the fiscal year, this is when boards and committees must do their annual leadership selections. So what we do is that we accept nominations for chair and vice chair, which are voted on by the entire committee. So we start with chair and then we move to vice chair. We've talked about this a lot. So for chair, I would like to nominate Karen to co-chair with me and divide up some chair responsibilities through the year. What those will look like will be that Karen will handle a lot of the outward face of chairing, and I will handle more of the inner part of chairing. So by the inner part, I mean things like running the meetings and doing things like drafting our annual report, which is our summary of what we do every year, which is required by law. Whereas Karen will be the one who is more of the public face, who town members will communicate with, will be taking the lead on that aspect. If there are any other nominations for chair, this is the time to bring them up, or any comments on the current nominations.
I think the current nominations are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Sure you do.
Yeah.
All right, is there, I don't, do I have to move? All right, so I move that Karen and I assume co-chair responsibilities for the upcoming 2021 year. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have co-chairs.
Yay.
Yay. The next is for vice chair. And I'd spoken with a couple of you about, the initial list I had drafted up of sort of the various things that need to get done and aspects that people might be willing to take on. Allie and Irene have volunteered to step into the vice chair role and also co-vice chair and share it. So I move to nominate Allie and Irene, whose consent I have, even though she's not able to make the meeting tonight. Is there a second?
Second.
Right.
Yay, guys. Sorry.
Technically you have to vote.
Right.
Any comments? No. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. So we'll have Allie and Irene as vice chairs. So just as a summary, here are some of you have volunteered to take on kind of discrete roles, which I think we'll get into an organizing document over the next month or so, kind of like we had the Google Doc that had broken things down by project and kind of who was working on what HRC project. We have to update that as well. Kathy has volunteered to help with our HRC email and in particular to monitor the ally list. So keep that updated every time we have an event or training with more people who are interested, which might also morph into, I think one of our projects this year is going to be to figure out how to use our allies now that we have a really strong number of them and what's the most effective way to leverage this growing interest in the committee. What do we have here? All right, so Allie is gonna take over the drafting responsibility. So when the HRC needs to make a statement, she'll be the one to take sort of the first stab based on our template and whatever the incident is, and she will send that around for comments and review. Irene is going to head up the part of the public facing job, which is that the HRC often needs to be present at a lot of community events and just making sure that someone from the committee can be there to represent the committee. So she may be the one you're hearing from, like, this is happening, can anyone be here on this date at this time to do whatever it is. All right, so that's kind of the summary of where we are now. I think Karen and I can work on getting this up in a more permanent written form that we can refer to and remember in case we have questions. Any questions or comments on that agenda item? All right, great. Okay, so next item is the listening session, right? And this is kind of where we had ended up after the last meeting. I spoke with the family who had moved from Easton, had a long conversation with a husband and wife. They were very nice, and enough time had passed that they felt comfortable and wanted to talk about it. And the short of it is they are very happy to participate in a listening session, should we choose to do that in whatever form, to share their experiences in Easton. So they are a definite. Amy drafted up this great document, which I think I'm going to maybe hand over to her to start with as a framework for figuring out what our listening sessions are going to look like, how to organize them, how to coordinate them, and kind of both what our next steps are and what our full plan is.
Yeah, sure. I guess it was just kind of a brain dump on paper. I have to even find it. Sorry, I was taking minutes.
Yeah, and if those of you who have been busy working today, Amy emailed it out this afternoon, so you should see the attachment in your email if you want to pull it up.
Yeah, it looks great.
It's really basic, like what is it, what's the purpose, our secondary purpose, and then like what's feasible, like what's a tentative plan. And I guess the bullet points there would be every other month. We could try to coincide with local or national events, partner with organizations around town to help promote and drive attendance. I figure it would be 1 or 2 hours. We all agreed to do it on Zoom, that remote was a good idea. I would hope that 2 or 3 HRC members could be there, like a facilitator, a note taker, a general, participant. And that we could try to kick off with a guest speaker. I use guest like in air quotes, because whoever would be willing, just get someone committed to, you know, sharing to kick it off, to get the conversation going. Tabitha is, I don't know if anyone knows Tabitha Talib, but she was a former HRC member, and she shared some guidelines that her, I don't know, whatever organization she works for, they're kind of like online policies as far as like creating a respectful environment, taking turns listening. Like I can share those as a follow-up, but I figured we'd have to write up some guidelines to get people to understand how we wanted the meetings to be run. And then, you know, good practice is just to send a follow-up afterwards to make sure that what we're doing is, hi, what's up? Go away. That everything is just going as intended, and learn from meeting to meeting on how to get better. That's it. And then I had some ideas about what a potential calendar could look like. I'm like not tied to any of this, so if anyone has other ideas or other gut instincts about what we could pull off, like.
Amy, I think, I mean, thank you so much for putting it all together, because it's just a lot, like you said, a brain dump on paper. I think that I'm really looking forward to doing this, and I think it's a really good idea. And I think it's like, this is a perfect thing for us to do as Human Rights Committee. And it's something that falls within our guidelines, doesn't cost any money, and like, you know, benefits the whole community. The only portion that maybe I would disagree with, and I know like you're super like just general and throwing out ideas. I don't know about every other month. I think that might be a little hard to do. But then again, depending on how many people we get. And I was hoping, like you said, as far as, you know, thinking about how to get people to be either speakers or just join, you know, if we, I don't know if everyone wrote or was able to read the email that I sent out about like approaching members of our neighborhood that are of either color or minority, or, you know, have a different experience than maybe the rest of us. If we could use like that sort of like conversation to maybe then open it up to them as an invitation to join like this listening session.
Aliki, I like that idea of tied it in with people you either already have a relationship with or have like enough of a beginning of a relationship with that you could possibly initiate that conversation. I think we do need to be sensitive, because while some people might enjoy the opportunity to speak about their experiences, other people might not want to be like the whatever we're viewing them as to speak about their experience.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think that's something that all of us, I think, would just have to personally suss out and feel comfortable handling, so as not to unintentionally put anyone on the spot or offend them.
Absolutely. What do people think about like other ideas? Like how else could we get, because this is something I've been thinking about. I'm like, how do we get, you know, who do we ask? Like, I mean, I have one of my best friends is an Easton resident, and she is Lebanese descent. And she is a school counselor at actually Bishop staying in Dartmouth. But, you know, there's like a member of our community that, and she's also like, she runs like the diversity multicultural department there as well at Bishop staying. So someone from Easton, and, you know, somebody like that, maybe that, you know, like that's an education and has experience with, you know, kids and diversity and multiculturalism. I don't know. I mean, what kind of person are we looking for?
So, Aliki, are you asking about who we would want to be on the panel to have the conversation, or who we would invite?
Who would be on the panel?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's getting into a good question of formatting, right? Which kind of goes back to Amy's initial structure. So one question is setting up a year's worth of programming versus not. I like the idea of setting up a year's worth of programming because that way it's not a one-off, right? And there's planning and predictability. Now I say this all with the caveat that I have no idea how long we will be able to use Zoom as a committee. So, you know, we know everything is changing frequently anyways, but we may find that come the fall, Zoom's not an option, and to continue these, we hold them in person, and then that requires a lot of different kind of planning. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but let's just all have that in the back of our mind. It's not an assumption we can continue using Zoom. Can we take a step back and talk about frequency, which Aliki brought up? Let's look at topical topics. You know, so Amy broke them down to say, like, what if we have a focus for each month and we kind of narrow down what we're talking about? And then we get to Aliki's third point, which is, all right, well, how do we organize it? Is there like a keynote? Do we have a bunch of speakers? Is there an open portion? So how do we feel about those? Year long?
Yeah, I think that's a good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a good start. I think focusing on maybe just having a first conversation around frequency first, because I do think that Aliki brings up a good point. It's our first opportunity. I mean, we've kind of been talking about this for quite some time and very excited about it, but kind of going right off the bat and committing to 6 in a year, I think is a pretty big commitment for this group. So we may want to start off with kind of a potentially even a quarterly commitment or a biannual commitment, just to kind of get us going. And then also it would give us a pulse check of the interest in our community for participation. It would also allow us not to have to maybe, you know, force people to help be our speakers by, you know, bribing them with dinners or anything like that, right? I think this way we will also
that
have,
on a recorded meeting by a town committee,
bribing.
even if you're joking.
And yeah, so I mean, I just think that if we probably want to think about, you know, the fact that this is our first opportunity to bring this to the community. So we may want to kind of be cautious about how much commitment we put up front.
I like the idea of doing it quarterly. I think that would, and I think we need to force ourselves to make it happen, because it's too easy to say we'll do 1 or 2. If we did it quarterly, and you know, I think we have to be flexible though, because who knows how the first one runs, and I think we'll probably change it up dramatically after that. But you know, I think we need to, and this could be sort of the focus. Our focus for the year is really to get these going.
I agree. I think quarterly feels right to me. I think if we aim for the first one to be in September or October, that gives us enough leeway to, you know, grow some excitement about it, to sort of get our ducks in a row around who we invite, who we line up to present. And then, you know, going forward, I think we should leverage, well, this is a separate conversation, I guess, but we should leverage our sort of friends of the HRC network for ideas as well.
Would we also want to be mindful of when we have our other organized events and not doing it in the same month? So we wouldn't do it the same month as the NRT. We wouldn't do it the same month as those others.
Of course, is there going to be an NRT this year?
Right, theoretically. I'm not scared of the every 2 months, but what I'm thinking of is organization and how we break it down. So is this one of those things where like someone takes ownership of the project the way we've broken down other things? Because this is different, like this would be year round. Or do people break down like, I'll take the next one, which is on topic X. I'll take the one after that, which is on topic Y. And you kind of, a little bit of a mold or a template to follow, which Kathy's right, like we'll figure it out after we do it once or twice. We'll get a better sense of what works. But maybe the point person is the one responsible for coordinating who's going to speak.
I was thinking, Liz, that maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think about for myself, you know, taking that event on my own. I don't know if I could do it. Also, you know, because I don't really know a lot of people in the town either. So my vision was sort of, you know, like one person could do, organize who's going to be like on the panel. The other person could be responsible for actually inviting people to listen and participate and be like in the audience and part of the discussion. And another person could come up with like the agenda or the questions. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking
And then
initially.
I like that idea of splitting it up. And then we would also need somebody to probably potentially have a prep call with whoever is on the panel to come up
And-
with some
yeah.
questions to plant, things like that.
And then another person, well, all of us really should be like kind of advertising it, but I don't know, that's.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a group effort that you divide up the tasks, and maybe there's a smaller committee amongst us that works on this and, you know, starts to iron out all the intricacies. Having worked on the book group discussion, there's a lot to plan in terms of making these work. So we want to stay on top of all those details.
So I like that concept of a subcommittee, because I know we've been talking about maybe being able to leverage a subcommittee that would allow us the opportunity to maybe meet more frequently and be able to plan accordingly without kind of the formality around our monthly discussions. Liz, how would we go about kind of formation of a subcommittee focused on listening sessions?
I would have to look into that. I'm not sure if we have any restrictions.
Could we pull in the some people from the general public that aren't on this? Like, I see people in our waiting room who I know would be really good candidates for maybe being under, like some of us being kind of the point people, but they might be good community subcommittee people, because we've talked about that before, where we have like a community not that weren't actively involved all the time, but this might be a good place to kind of start that formation of that community subcommittee and kind of work through this project for the year.
You're talking about opening this up to our ally group and saying,
yes,
hey, we're doing it, and saying, here's what we need help with. Is anyone interested?
Right.
Okay.
Good idea.
I like that.
And also, do you know anybody who would potentially want to present on it?
Well, I see people in the attendees. I don't want to call them out without asking them at first, but if you take a look at who's in there, a couple of them I know. I don't know the third person, but two of them might be.
Yeah.
Or
So,
three might be, I don't know.
this is just a note for the members of the public in general, whether you are live on the meeting with us or watching this at another time. We always welcome people interested in our mission. And the best way to get in touch with us is through our town email, which is simply humanrights@easton.ma.us. So if you're hearing this live or on recording and you are interested in being part of our ally group, please send us an email to humanrights@easton.ma.us and let us know of your interest, and we will put you on our list. All right, I'm making a note about looking into meeting as a subcommittee. So it sounds like there was a consensus to change it from 6 times a year to quarterly. Yes, no, do we want to talk about that more?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so we'll move to quarterly, which is related to the other discussion of like exactly which months and kind of which quarters we're doing this, and possible overlap with traditional things we would do during the year, whether they happen or not. Amy, I also saw your note. Like, I love how you broke it down by topics and kind of matched them up to appropriate times in the year where those topics might have more heightened awareness. I do feel like we should start with race, given what's going on.
Liz, somebody posted their interest from that group.
Yep, got it. So we'll take people, you know, like I said, send an email to humanrights@easton.ma.us, and we'd love to have you.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry, if it's possible, I don't know if it is. Do we have a date on when school is going back for Easton?
It's still supposed to.
I can pull that up.
Right, Michelle?
I was just gonna say, because I thought it might be a good idea if we can maybe try to have like one first listening session right before the start of school. That might be a good kickoff.
September 2nd.
I think they actually start the end of August, but I can get the exact date if you want.
So pro and con with August, right? Like if it were in person, everyone would be gone, but I'm going to guess we're still going to be on Zoom next month, and it might be relatively easy for people to participate for something in August.
Do you see the first one being inviting the former Easton residents to come and speak?
Well, let's talk about two things now. One, a possible calendar, like what month we want our first one to be, and then kind of measuring out that way and see if that fits. And then Kathy, let's get to your second point, which is, what do we think the format is going to be? How many speakers? Is it one? Is it many? You know, and then who are they and how are we going to decide if there are many people?
Liz, I think that if we can get that family to come to the first one, that would be so great. Also, just for like the attention that that whole incident received, maybe we could be able to offer some closure as far as to what that, because I don't know, is the investigation done?
I've not heard from Matt.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him.
Know.
I was going to, but I thought it might be too soon. So I'll reach out to him. But
yeah,
you know, if we could, it would be good to have them because it did get so much attention, I think. And if people know that they're coming to speak, I think it would bring a lot of interest. And it would like really give a really good kickoff to like this whole series that we're doing, you know, and set a really good sort of bar or tone. But I don't know how possible that is. Hopefully, maybe that could maybe be like our goal.
Okay. Well, so they're definitely interested and willing to speak. You know, it's really kind of up to us to let them know, and, you know, obviously working out details with people's schedules. If we do August, like Aliki's proposing, so that theoretically is like August, November, February, May, if we do it quarterly.
September 2nd is the first day for grades 1 through 12. And kindergarten is September 4th.
Okay.
So maybe at like the end of August, and then when we come to November, and that's like Thanksgiving time, I mean, maybe we'll adjust, you know, at that point. And, you know, if we skip a month, that's okay. Like people get busy and we don't even know if maybe schools open back up by then. And who knows, people are going back to their office. But I mean, I think that's a good template to have though.
I also wonder, and Michelle, you might know more on this, is there an opportunity to partner maybe with the school in some way, shape, or form? Especially, I know I don't know if it's 6th grade or all of the middle school is reading the graphic novel.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, Beth.
So that might be a good partnership, and also bring in folks from Raising Multicultural Kids. My concern is just having this family be the spotlight. I don't want to do that. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. I want to honor kind of what they've gone through and their voice in the process, but also making it a larger topic about how we can respond as a town. That might be helpful.
Okay, so it sounds like we're agreed on quarterly. It sounds like people feel okay with aiming for August and roughly going 3 months from August, obviously with a little leeway based on how the first one goes and based on what the world looks like in August going forward.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then we get to Beth's point, which has come up a couple times, which is like, all right, well, what is this going to look like? Is it one person talking for a long time? Is it going to be a bunch of people sharing various experiences on whatever the topic of the session is? Is there room for public participation or comments or questions? And what does that look like? So let's talk through those.
So are we
go ahead, sorry.
So that we could have the participants could send in their questions the same way?
So again, assuming that we still have Zoom webinar and it's set up like, you know, it's a separate question whether it's a webinar versus meeting and who gets to see who and how stuff is communicated. So we certainly have the freedom to arrange what any kind of public input or participation looks like. Do we allow it at all? Or is it simply listening, like you're here to listen to this set group of people talk about whatever it is they're talking about? Kathy, is anything coming to mind as like stuff you feel like we should or shouldn't do?
I like having the control over asking the questions and not just allowing anybody to speak. But I do think having public participation is important. It's not just listening that, but do what you have done is filter the questions and make sure that they're all respectful and are, advance what we want the purpose of the meeting to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important to have a moderator, facilitator as part of the listening session. Absolutely. I also think there are lots of best practices that have been pretty well documented around how to facilitate listening sessions, and maybe some of the folks on the committee have been involved in them, whether through its workplace or other circumstances. We may want to try and gather some of those. I feel like August might be really soon for us to pull this all together, unless we're talking about end of August. But my thought is it's going to take a little bit for us to kind of pull this together. Again, being our first time, being able to pull this, organizing this and ensuring that we have a kind of a well-facilitated discussion, making sure that we have the right speakers involved, making sure that we kind of speak to Beth's point around how do we respond as a town. And that might take a little bit of coordination with whether we engage the school or police or whoever. So I want to be a little cautious of a commitment around August just because of that. But I do think we need to do a little bit of homework around maybe gathering a couple of the industry, not industry, but maybe other HRCs, if they may have, started to do some of these listening sessions, anything that they've learned from those interactions that they might want to share with us. I think this is a good opportunity for us to do a little bit of research.
So Karen, I was just going to add on a little bit to that. I almost feel like maybe it could be called like a listening / education session. So, I mean, here's what I'm like envisioning is like this family coming and talking about what happened to them. And then like somebody like, my friend, for example, who was a town resident and there could be people that offer ways to like cope or not cope, but offer ways on how to like react to that, offer ways, almost like a bystander training. Like, how do you react to racism if it's happening in front of you too, So, I mean, I don't know. I'm seeing it as like a listening session, but also I feel like listening might not be motive enough to get people to come, and maybe education and getting something out of it and just proposing it that way might be better.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause that now because I'm seeing a lot of different tasks and decisions. So to Karen's point, is there anyone who is interested in doing some of this research or who already feels comfortable or has this in this back pocket of like moderating and sort of best practices on moderating a conversation? All right, so that's a TBD. The other topics that I've heard,
So Liz, maybe before we walk away from that one real quick, I mean, I wonder if Tabitha might be interested in something like that for us. Maybe that's an outreach opportunity as a friend of the HRC and a previous member who has this experience. Yeah, she might be a good contact for us. Okay.
So I'll follow up with Tabitha on kind of best practices or guidance for that. And then the other two topics that we keep sort of dancing around. One is how many people are participating? How many speakers do we have? And to Aliki's second point, what's the point of the listening session, right? Is it, hey, Easton, this is what people who live and work in Easton have experienced on topic of the month? Is it, hey, how can you be an active bystander? What could you do to prevent or respond if you see or hear of someone experiencing something like what you just heard? So let's do that second topic first, right? In terms of topic of the month is X, do you envision having one person talk for 30 minutes about it, having half dozen different people share their experiences?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So last time we talked about the secondary purpose of actually listening to the community members and getting a better grip on what's going on around town so we can figure out how to be more helpful. I feel like if we curate this too much, if we have too many scheduled speakers, you know, with an agenda, that it turns into something different, which is okay, but you lose that, the actual listening part, which I think is important.
I'm curious too if other families or other people would be willing to talk about it too and not limit it just to that family's experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
You know, I think like,
Absolutely.
because we can balance that with other people's experiences that maybe haven't been as negative, or
Right.
and then kind of figure out a way to round out the conversation of, you know, how to best support this kind of situation, or how to best be an ally to this kind of situation or something. I don't know. But I kind of like the idea of like having, you know, people participate in that conversation and not just having, you know, one particular person's view.
One of the things I think we could do, and for the first one, is have Matt speak also about what his role is in the town, and sort of put the framework so people understand that there is that position and what that he does. And then, so it could be, and then it would be educational as well.
I was gonna say, I think that having that family come, I don't think that they should be the only one there. Like I you know, I'm envisioning like that family and maybe like 2 or 3 other people. So maybe like 4 people max each session.
Okay, so I'm hearing a consensus that whatever our topic of the month, the session is, we want to hear several different voices about people's lived experience with that topic, and whether it's direct or indirect, like Officer Badoud would be, we might adjust topic by topic. You know, that gets into a separate question of like, okay, so how do we decide who's in charge of inviting? What happens if we have 10 people we can all think of off the top of our head, and we all kind of suss it out and they're like, ooh, yeah, me. Do we say no, right? So we have some procedural things with that aspect.
Do you mean for like a panelist? Sorry.
Yeah, yes, for each session, right? Because we said, you know, we don't want to only hear one person or one family's experience on that topic. We do want to hear other people's, right? But what's going to be our process? How do we solicit or invite? What happens if we have too few or too many? You know, how are we going to decide? Is there a set number? Is there a certain amount of,
maybe like the subcommittee might be helpful in making some of those specific decisions, I'm wondering. I don't know. Or if maybe by each topic there's like 3 or 4 of us that get together and do that particular one, or like you said, breaking it down, you know. But I wonder if that's where a subcommittee might be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is where some of those best practices that I was recommending us look into a little bit more, because I do think that there is some documentation out there about, 8 people on a panel is way too many, depending upon your time constraint, or, you know, making sure that you do have a strong facilitator or moderator who could help move the conversation along, or, you know, making sure that your topic isn't too broad, because that could, you know, potentially kind of limit the progress, or being able to have kind of constructive conversation. So we may need to do a little bit more of that kind of digging to understand what that should look like.
It feels like we should see if we can have the committee. We should get people who are interested now in participating in that committee, have that committee work for the next month, and then present at the next meeting, you know, answering some of these questions and see what it looks like. Yeah, I don't know if you guys had a chance to see the stuff I sent that Amy McManus sent me. So hers would be maybe having people watch this video ahead of time and then come, and maybe Amy would come and a couple of the students would come and talk about whatever the topic we wanted to have. So the format could be slightly different each one. It doesn't have to be exactly the same.
And to Amy's point on the list, right? If we look at this, we're like, oh, we really should put topic X on there. If these are going well, like, we can just keep going, right?
Totally.
And, you know, we could even do it more frequently if we're in a groove and we have a system down.
Or the other way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's going to be a bigger problem if you have too fewer people that are wanting to participate and speak, because if we have like a lot, then we can, you know, I feel like it might be easy enough. That's a good thing. We could have like a second session on like the same topic, you know, so it doesn't take a 4-hour, you know, chunk of people's time. But yeah.
Okay. So at this point, I will follow up with Craig and Mike. Do you know off the top of your head whether our committee is able to do a subcommittee to work on this? Is that permitted? All right, Mike maybe isn't there. Okay. All right, so let's see on our end. Is anyone interested in being part of this subcommittee to iron out a lot of these issues in more detail? All right, so Aliki, Amy, Steph, and Kathy. So that's a good start. So the 4 of you right now will be sort of the point people for the subcommittee. I will let, of course, all of us know as soon as I hear about what the 4 of you can and can't do in between meetings. I will reach out to Tabitha to ask about best practices, but in the meantime, the 4 of you, you know, go nuts with whatever resources or research or personal networks you have to look at that same topic. And then we can go from there, which sounds like we're going to have an August meeting. Okay.
Liz, who would be our point person for questions about, I mean, maybe this is Craig, or if you reach out to the town, like, would we have to record these? Like, people are going to be more reluctant to share if we record, like,
so
what the rules about public participation are, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'll double check that with Mike. We are not required to record it as a committee meeting, but it's possible, just like Mike was saying, because it's done through the town and they need to have a record that the town is holding these Zoom meetings. It's possible through that format it might need to be recorded, in which case we might want to look at partnering and, you know, perhaps if like the library or the Y or, you know, whoever else can partner with us and they have some kind of Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever account, we can, because I agree with you, recording I don't think is a good idea for these.
I have a question too, and I just thought about if we do, the panelists or people that are speaking have to be either a resident or work in or have any affiliation with Easton, or can they be like a racist or, you know, a racist expert or racism expert from some other town?
So my initial thought is that I would prefer to hear from people who either live or work in Easton, because I think the purpose would be to talk about what people are experiencing in town.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I just meant not as far as an experience. I'm sorry. I meant like if, like my friend, for example, I mean, she's a town resident, but if there was somebody else who was like a professor on like, I don't know, history of racism and the, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, would they be considered?
I think to me that sounds like a different activity for us to do, like still valuable and still something that a lot of groups would partner with, but I'm not sure I would fit that in the listening session model.
Okay.
But I don't know what the rest of you think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that speaks to, we really need to define what is this model.
Mm.
I think it would be fine to include somebody like that as long as it were one of a panel of people,
Mm-hmm.
and at least one person on that panel had a story to tell about Easton.
Right. Okay.
Amy, you've been thinking about it. Talk to us more about what you think this looks like.
I think we're overthinking it compared to what I thought it would be. I thought we could maybe have one person, I would probably say a resident or somebody local, to share their experience as a conversation starter. And I was hoping it would be something that had more public participation. Like, the point is for us to listen and for people to listen to each other. That is kind of what I was envisioning, less of like a panel or guest speakers. That to me is more educational I mean, I think there's a benefit to both, but I was kind of envisioning something a little more low fidelity, like get the people to talk.
That sounds like more work to me.
Really?
Yeah, because
think
if you have
so.
50 people on a call, and I mean, depending on, someone's got to moderate, right? Otherwise people are going to be jumping all over each other, or that you just have the Q&As coming in, right? And you're having a conversation that way. But
yeah, so I mean, I attended one through work with 1,200 associates, and it was very powerful, but there was a primary speaker who was kind of the head of our diversity, our chief diversity officer type of role. And they utilized the chat box to kind of share, people were sharing experiences that they'd gone through. And we're talking about, some pretty powerful interactions that they've had around race and discrimination. And then the person who was speaking and the moderator would help to kind of bring in some of those pieces as part of the conversation. But with 1,200 people, it would have been difficult to hear those voices and then be able to moderate. So I don't think we're going to get 1,200 people joining our listening session, but I do think it would require a really good amount of kind of navigation around the skill sets of being able to kind of start and stop and help people along. And some people get pretty long-winded, or it may become really unruly, I think.
So in the session you went to, they read the stories that people put in?
Not all of them, because they were so plentiful, but they absolutely pulled in different pieces. And you could tell that people were reading them because they were commenting and providing some empathy and some of their own experiences. I mean, it was a very powerful session.
But you only heard from the moderator and the speaker?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did something similar actually, and this is why I'm envisioning the same thing you are, Karen, is because we did the same thing at my job. It wasn't as 1,200 people, but it was like, it was a couple of hundred, and they had pre-planned like people that work in our department that have these stories about racism. They planned a call and they said, okay, on Friday, these 4 people are going to speak about on this conference call about, their experiences. You could chat questions in the box if you wanted to. There was a moderator that introduced everybody and then one person to the other. But it was like a listening session, but you could still like ask questions and then like interact afterwards, like with each other.
I experienced something similar, and it also worked because everyone had a time limit. Like Karen
right.
spoke, but
Yes.
she only had 10 minutes total, which included the questions, and then
Right.
Kathy, and then Michelle. All right, well, so subcommittee, that's also another thing that you 4 can start hashing out and start thinking through as the rest of us research best practices. Does that sound like a good endpoint for the listening session and a good to-do list going forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. I have to add on here so I don't forget that we have to set our next meeting. Okay. All right. So our next agenda item is the book discussion, which started off many months ago with Kathy working with the library and has now turned into a different book discussion. So those of you who've been attending the very frequent meetings the last month, why don't you fill us in?
Well, I will. I think I've gone to all of them. Amy shared the flyer. Did everybody see the flyer? Basically what we're going to do is have 4 sessions. So this is supposed to be a series. So this is just the first book in a whole series of books. That there was a discussion about the choice of the book, and that was an interesting discussion. But
sorry, just to pause and back up, right? Like this is a conversation that is being done in conjunction with Raising Multicultural Kids. So this is a partnership between the 2 organizations.
Correct. And I think the library may also partner, but that hasn't been approved by their board yet. listening, are also, so there'll be an overarching moderator, and then there'll be breakdown to 3 groups to talk about things, and then you actually break down into smaller groups of 10. Amy, can you think of anything I'm missing?
The library did agree to participate
okay.
in their giving another moderator. And the flyers are official, and Ruth Bluestone, I don't know if anyone knows her from Parkview, but she's been pretty active in it too, and she started sharing it today.
So because it is limited to 100 people, people have to register, and then once they get to 100, that's the, you know, they'll be limited to that. So if people are interested, I would encourage you to register now.
Kathy, did you say, sorry, my internet cut out for a second, but did you talk about Paperback Junction too? How they're involved? Okay, sorry. I missed a little bit of that.
Me too.
And actually, Stephanie, I think we decided you volunteered to be able to help people that are having issues during the session, and I think they do want you to use you in that way.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Kelly had emailed me about that too, and Ruth.
Good. And there were, you know, it's a lot of questions, and we're learning a lot about how you have to make sure people are respectful and are able to go through this. Because it is going to be, it's not with questions and answers that you moderate. It's face-to-face in your subgroup on Zoom. So it'll be an interesting process.
All right. So Amy passed around the flyer. We can put that up on the website. And then those of you who are already liaising really closely can just let us know if there's anything further needed from the committee other than the sign up ASAP if you're interested part. Okay. Great. Thank you guys. Great work on that. For community outreach, I'm not sure we have anything that we need to address for community outreach right now, although we have a question that I'd like to address indirectly. So just a reminder that if you put a question into the Q&A box, to comply with open meeting law, you have to say your first and last name and your address the same way you would if you were speaking at a public meeting. But all town meetings are open to the public. So anyone is welcome to attend or come to any public meetings. And we are glad you are here. All right, so community outreach. I think we're doing a lot of community outreach right now. I think we can maybe table that for now, maybe not applicable the way it was 6 months ago. So for other action items, there are a couple things that have come up on my radar. I want to pick up on something Beth said. So this is the book she was referencing, and I know it's coming across backwards right now, but this is the middle school school-wide read, and it's called New Kid, and it's a graphic novel. And thematically, Beth, have you had a chance to read it?
We haven't gotten it yet because according to Jack, if I read it now, I'll forget. So
yeah, which is likely, I was just excited the library was doing interlibrary loan again. So I skimmed it, you know, it's a quick read, but it's a really good read. Like topically, there's a lot in there that is relevant to the HRC. And as I was reading it and also seeing all of these emails about the partnership with RMK and that book club, I wanted to explore with the middle school and wanted to see what you all thought about this, about doing a parent sort of debrief for middle school parents. So their kids are going to be talking about this in whatever form in ELA. And I don't know how expansive or not it's going to be, but I thought it would be really useful for the parents and also maybe a good community building exercise, even if you do it like grade 6 parents one night, grade 7 parents another night, to say like, this is what's in this book, right? Like, these are what microaggressions are. There's this character who thinks he's, doing the right thing, but it's actually offensive to someone that way. And then there's this character who, takes offense at something another student does, but actually the student was just really paying attention, and this student was kind of reading into things in a way that wasn't there. So if, and this again fits really nicely with what RMK is doing. So that was just an idea that I had about possibly coordinating that for the fall. Ideally, I don't want us to moderate it. Ideally, I want the middle school teachers to moderate it and even do like this, almost the same lesson plan they would do with the middle school kids that they would do with the parents.
Well, I used to like when we would do the book club for RO, and the families would read it together and they would have discussion questions. So it's my only concern about just doing it one night is what happens after. So I think it might be helpful to start that with that one night of, this is what the book is, this is what the point is, and here's some topical questions, and then maybe even a reading guide, or I don't know, Liz, if because we haven't gotten it yet, if at the back of the book it has all sorts of discussion questions.
Good question. I don't think so, no.
But that might be helpful for people to go through as well. And I know we can't do it by class because I don't think those students don't usually get assigned until late August. Right. So
well, by grade is what I was thinking.
No, but I'm saying even if you did, so if you have that by year kind of, this is what the book is, here's some discussion questions. I also wonder if there's an opportunity to continue to the discussion, because I can't, is that going to be built into the curriculum? So that's one of the questions that I have is, that's great that we read the book over the summer, but then what? Like, how is that theme carried out throughout the entire school year, or is it not?
Okay. I can follow up with Mr. Carroll and at least my son's English teacher from last year, just to see what she might know about, Beth, your questions about, is this a one-off or is this being incorporated more into year-long curriculum stuff at the middle school? And then depending on what I hear back at our next meeting, we can talk about whether is there a path going forward? What's the role for the HRC? How do the rest of you feel?
Yeah, and I think, the superintendent advisory committee has been sidelined a bit because of COVID. So I can ask Leisha too and just say, this came up. If you want to let me know what Mr. Carroll says, and I can talk to Leisha. But I know that they were also planning on looking through their entire kind of canon that they give the students and adjusting it as necessary, so it's not just all to better reflect inclusivity, but I also know that COVID has obviously had a major impact on that.
Right. Okay. All right, so I will have those to-dos, and Beth, if you can follow up through the superintendent advisory committee, kind of broach the same question, maybe we can get it the same answer or same person. Okay. Another other action item. So it is the time of year when we need to update the religious holiday observance calendar. Again, who knows what school looks like and what any of this is going to mean, but I feel like we need to continue putting it out there that all of these other religions exist and have holidays, and just increase cultural competency and awareness for teachers and staff. In the past, Amy had taken on the job of updating the calendar. Amy, I don't know what your bandwidth is, because right now I think you are taking notes in on every committee. So up to you whether this is something you want to do in the next month.
If Amy's too tired, I'll do it.
Maybe we can work together. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, if you want it, by all means. It's not the most fun thing in the world to do, but I'm also happy to do it, and I've done the last two, so.
All right, well, let me know if you need any help.
Okay, thanks, Lee.
Right. So Amy and Aliki will work on that for the next month. Obviously, the sooner we can get it out, the better, particularly for early fall holidays. But again, who knows what's going on with any kind of planning about trips and events. So, all right, so that's the calendar. I have a quick other action item, which is that right before this meeting, I had checked our human rights, our town email, and there is going to be a statewide Zoom meeting for human rights commissions to talk about sort of like globally, what's the role of an HRC committee, commission, whatever you are in your particular municipality, going forward on lots of very current topics, particularly with racial injustice. So the meeting is Monday, August 3rd at 7 p.m. I have a feeling I have a conflict because I have a virtual conference that week. But if you are interested or available, please let me know. And when I get the Zoom link, I will send it to you. I don't think we're limited to the number of people who can attend, but I do think we need to have at least one of us there representing Easton.
Liz, and I do plan on joining that.
Okay, great.
Me too.
Who is the me too? Aliki and Kathy. Okay, great. Super.
Kathy, is that the night? Is that our
I will
book
too, Liz.
series?
Oh,
Because it's on Monday nights. I was just thinking that.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it goes through
Sorry.
August. Yeah, that was because I was thinking of of interest, but I know that's
All
our
right,
book
take-
club night.
All right, I would take you off, Kathy. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Other action items? Yeah, Michelle.
No, I'm going to be at that Zoom.
Oh,
I didn't know you were moving on. Sorry.
Oh, you know, that's okay. The statewide one, Michelle.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Cool. All right. Anything else? Other action items? Things we emailed about?
Yeah, I talked to Liza, the woman who gave that awesome seminar I took, and she's booked pretty far out, but I do have a meeting with her. I actually had to like book time to even talk to her about booking time. So it's Thursday at 10:30 if anybody else wants to meet her, or if anyone has questions, just send them my way and I'll ask them.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Good. Other items?
Do we need to figure out our calendar of events for the year? Is that this meeting or next meeting?
Well, that's a tricky one. Normally we would do that around right now. I'm not sure how much we can plan out. So I'm not sure that's the best use of our time. How do the rest of you feel?
I think we should wait. We don't even know if NRT is going to be happening.
Okay. All right, so let's put that on the August agenda, right? That we'll take a look at the year. We'll also know more about what this listening session may or may not look like. And who knows, you know, August, we could have lots of new and different information, or maybe not. We'll have to see, as long as we all wear our masks over our nose, right? Okay. We've got questions from the public, which we have addressed. So our last agenda item is just to plan our next meeting. Mike, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. What does your availability look like in August? What would be our options for a meeting in the first or second week of August?
So I'm pretty open, but I think actually by August, we anticipate having the chairs, giving the chairs of the boards and committees access to the Zoom accounts.
Okay.
So I think it will be pretty flexible because you'll be able to log in, but certainly I'm available to help if need be.
Okay. No, I was just thinking from a scheduling standpoint, how many working pieces, but it sounds like it would be more within our committee scheduling by August.
Correct. That's the anticipation as of today. Yeah.
All right. Fingers crossed. Okay. Do people have any preferences in terms of day of the week, times of the week?
I usually don't. I was only going to propose that we do August 4th, only because it'll be the day after that Zoom meeting that I think is a pretty big deal. We can talk about that. And then it's also going to be, it's going to give us enough time to work as a subcommittee to come up with, you know, results for this potential listening session at the end of August. And I think if we have the meeting that first Tuesday instead of the second, we're also, you know, able to have another extra week to work on everything that we talked about in the meeting.
That makes sense. Do people have a preference, whether it's that Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday that week?
I won't be able to make that Thursday of that week.
All right, so Tuesday or Wednesday.
Let's stick with Tuesdays.
Okay. You want to maybe move it a little later to 7 p.m. or are you happy with the earlier time?
This time is good.
I like it.
I have no
Other
preference.
thoughts? Okay. All right. So for consistency, we'll keep it at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, August 4th, assuming that all works out technologically. Awesome. All right. Any other agenda items, things to bring up? No? Awesome. All right. Good to see you all. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Aye.
All right. Meeting is adjourned at 7:38.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye,
Thanks for
everyone.
joining us, Amy.
Have a good month.
Thank you. You too.